Hare Krishna. Today we have a special lecture by His Grace Chanchalapathi Prabhu on account of ISKCON founding day.
Krishna. This is 1966. Around March and April, Srila Prabhupada was conducting classes and meeting Dr. Mishra and addressing some of the students of Dr. Mishra. But Dr. Mishra had an impersonal idea, and Srila Prabhupada would speak from the Vaishnava point of view. And there was a little bit of a discomfort for Dr. Mishra. So there was one person, young person, Paul Murray. He invited Swamiji if he can come to his loft in Lower Manhattan in a place called Bowery. Those days, Srila Prabhupada used to have a journal, and he would keep track of various things that are happening on a day-to-day basis. So in one of those diaries, Prabhupada makes an entry that before he moved to Paul's place at Bowery, he conducts a program there, and he writes that as an experiment, I'm conducting this program, and the program went on well. But not so many people. There were about 8 or 10 people attending. But Prabhupada was happy because he had no obligations like with Dr. Mishra. He could speak freely to that audience. And so Srila Prabhupada is seriously considering moving to Lower Manhattan at 94 Bowery. So Prabhupada goes back and forth many times, stays overnight with in Paul's loft. And Paul is a young, about 17, 18-year-old American, young boy, taking to Krishna consciousness quite eagerly, wanting to hear from Prabhupada and understand Krishna consciousness. In fact, even Srila Prabhupada encouraged him, and he said that I'll send you to India. And he even had some correspondence with Scindia Shipping Company, asking Sumati Morarji, now I have one student whom I want to take with me, send him to India. Can you all give him a free ticket? And somehow it got declined. So Paul was taking to Krishna consciousness quite seriously, and Prabhupada was spending a lot of time with him. And then at a certain point of time, he tells Dr. Mishra that he's going to move over. And Prabhupada comes to 94 Bowery, and this is a loft on the 4th floor. It is 4th floor from American standards. It's from Indian standards. It's on the 3rd floor. Ground plus 1st, 2nd, 3rd. It was a big open space loft, and Srila Prabhupada had made an arrangement to have a curtain, and Prabhupada would sit behind the curtain, and there was a wooden table and 2 chairs. One chair on which Prabhupada would sit and work. He had a typewriter. One of the students had given him a typewriter, and so he was using that typewriter. And he had the manuscript, which was about 1 foot high, sheets of paper. And he would be preparing the manuscript, typing his books. And whenever there is somebody, he would go and talk to them, and they would come and sit and talk to him. or there was this big hall, open space, where Prabhupada would conduct the kirtans, would conduct the bhajans, and give classes. So there was this kind of a privacy, and Prabhupada liked it very much. This goes on for a few weeks, about 2 months. Young Americans are coming and they are hearing his classes. Actually, it was around that time Srila Prabhupada begins to contemplate on incorporating the society. There was one young American, Carl, who would come and meet Srila Prabhupada. And Carl was half black, a young American, who lived with his wife, Eva, not very far from 94 Bowery. And he had a contact with a lawyer, and so he offered to help Swamiji to incorporate the society. And at that time, and he goes and brings that lawyer. On 25th of March, the meeting happens. And Srila Prabhupada has brought with him from India the incorporation papers of League of Devotees, which he had incorporated in Jhansi many years ago. And for some reason, that League of Devotees could not go on, and there were many other aspects to that. We will not go into that. But Prabhupada had carried. In fact, after Srila Prabhupada wound up League of Devotees activities in Jhansi and moved to Vrindavan, he was all along contemplating about an international society. Much later, devotees discovered in one of the trunks that Prabhupada had few pages of the document, Memorandum of Association. And in fact, this was typed in October of 1963. So 2 years before Srila Prabhupada embarked on the Jaladuta voyage. So in October of 1963, Srila Prabhupada had prepared this document. It's very interesting. Even in 1963, Prabhupada was having all these aspirations. He called it the League of Devotees. And the second line, it says, incorporated in United States. Prabhupada is in Vrindavan. He's not gone to America. But he was already thinking that this should be incorporated in the United States. The name of the society is League of Devotees, Inc. I don't know how Srila Prabhupada had figured out Inc. That's a practice not in India. And then it says, the registered office of the society is situated at Washington, USA, or at New York, USA. So we can see how Srila Prabhupada had, even in 1963, October, in Radha Damodar temple, typing this on his typewriter, but envisioning that this society will get incorporated in America. So when this lawyer, Goldsmith, comes and meets Swamiji, he gives him some of these documents which has the objectives of the society, rules and regulations and all of those kind of things. And then he takes that and then he puts it in, he understands that, and in a way that is suitable for, according to American laws. And he prepares the documents. And once Prabhupada goes to meet the lawyer in his office, and a few of these kind of interactions are happening between the lawyer, and then according to American law, they had to put a board in front of the office for 15 days to see if there is anyone objecting to it or whatever the legal procedure was. So all of this was happening in 94 Bowery. And this sign was put up, and the lawyer said that this should be there publicly seen for 15 days, and after that, we will be ready to incorporate. And although Paul was showing a lot of interest in Krishna consciousness, but he could not give up his addiction to drugs. Very often he would be drugged, and Prabhupada had to tolerate that. And Prabhupada had grand plans, and Paul would respond to some extent. Prabhupada was thinking that we should convert, this is a big loft. This is very suitable for a temple. We should get Radha Krishna deities from Jaipur or Vrindavan. He talked about all of that. And Paul was very interested to know that Swamiji has these ideas. And so the idea was that Prabhupada's plan was to establish the temple there in the loft on the 4th floor, 94 Bhavri. But very often, Paul, although submissive to Prabhupada, when Prabhupada would give class, sometimes he would ask for water. Paul would very, very faithfully go behind, bring a glass of water, give it to Swamiji, and Prabhupada would drink, and then he would pick up the glass. So he was quite subservient, like a good student. But at the same time, he had this problem with drugs. And when you are living very closely with another, Prabhupada, an elderly person, very experienced, seen different things in life, pure devotee, and here there is a 17, 18-year-old American. And there were occasions where things were not very pleasant. Prabhupada would point out some mistakes, and he would become a little annoyed. Prabhupada would often, because they had a common bathroom and they had to share. And Prabhupada was very concerned that the soap should not be left on the floor, because Prabhupada, after all, is an elderly person. Imagine he goes to the washroom and there is a soap on the floor and he steps on it. He can slip and there can be an accident. So Prabhupada would talk about that, but invariably Paul would leave the soap on the floor. Small things like that. And Prabhupada was somehow tolerating. And then one day, Paul had taken an overdose of those drugs. And it was it happens a few times. And Prabhupada records that in his diary. One night at 10 o'clock, Prabhupada was still typing, and Paul became very annoyed. And he got into an argument, and Prabhupada said, "All right, I will not type." And he stopped typing. And it was not a very pleasant experience. Prabhupada does not elaborate on that, what exactly happened. He just writes that an incident extraordinary happened last night at 10 o'clock. And Paul became angry and upset. And then the next day, some of the young devotees who are coming, one of them, importantly, was Carl. Carl later on becomes Chanchalapathi Das, an initiated devotee. Swamiji tells Carl about that this kind of an experience I had the previous night. And Prabhupada writes that also in the diary. I shared this with Carl. And so Carl hears that one, and then he says that yes, somehow things are not going on very well with Srila Prabhupada, with Swamiji and Paul. And then one day in the morning, Prabhupada is there, Paul is there in the loft. Prabhupada is doing his work at the table, and Paul under the effect of the drug, he starts moaning and walking up and down in the loft. And then he begins to walk very, very quickly, and that moaning becomes louder and louder. And Swamiji is wondering what is happening to him. And he starts running up and down, and he's shouting and screaming. So Prabhupada is watching all this. And then he's speaking incoherently, loudly, and then he goes up and down running, and then he comes and stares at Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada asks him, yes, what happened? Calm down. But Paul is not in his senses. He is angry, and he is screaming, shouting, angry at Prabhupada. In that kind of a state, so Srila Prabhupada realizes that, this man has gone crazy, and he can probably do some harm to him. So Prabhupada slowly rises from his chair, walks to the door, and Paul is still screaming, shouting, running, and doing all of that. Slowly he opens the door, closes, and comes down. He's back down in the street in Manhattan. And he's thinking now what to do. This last few days of build-up of that, some annoying, not very pleasant relationship with Paul had finally ended up in this kind of a situation. And Prabhupada began to think what to do next. All his belongings are up there, and this man it's not at all safe for a frail, elderly person, sannyasi like Srila Prabhupada, to be in the company of a young American full of energy and going crazy with drugs. And then he goes to a nearby telephone booth and calls Carl. And Carl comes to know that already Carl is aware that this kind of a relationship is developing between Paul and Swamiji. And Carl was very nice, and he says, Swamiji, please come over to my house. It was just 5 blocks away. And Carl comes and takes Prabhupada to his house and invites him to his house. But he also has a loft, and he has a room. It's like a studio probably, or a big hall, living space with 1 bedroom. And he lives with his wife, Eva. So Carl is there, but Carl also has cats and dogs in his house, and his wife, who is not all that inspired about Krishna consciousness. Now, but somehow they accommodate, understanding Swamiji's situation, and he agrees to, and in the living room, Prabhupada is given a certain corner, and he begins to live there. And Carl goes to Paul's loft once again, brings all the different things, and now Swamiji is now staying with Carl. And Carl is very interested in Krishna consciousness, and he has long hours of conversations with Swamiji. And Prabhupada is spending a lot of time with Carl, explaining different aspects of Krishna consciousness. And that discussion about incorporating the society is continuing. But Carl's wife is not very comfortable. Swamiji, as it is his plan, now he has informed some of the followers who are coming to him in the loft in 94 Bovary to come to Center Street in Carl's house, and the programs would be happening there. And Carl's wife was not very comfortable. She was a white American woman, and she was not comfortable having all of these visitors coming. And what's happened to our privacy? We had our nice life, and all of a sudden Swamiji has come, and he has appropriated our whole home. And it's his work now going on, and his programs are going on, kirtans are going on, and Carl is spending a lot of time. She's very uncomfortable. And Prabhupada begins to sense that discomfort Carl and his wife are having because of him staying as a guest in their house. You can see these kind of things. Prabhupada would later on also recollect that how he was going from one place to another place, not clear, not having any certainty where he would be. Prabhupada, a highly respected gentleman, a sannyasi back home in Vrindavan, all the different religious organizations recognize Prabhupada as a very realized, very scholarly, very sincere, a great saintly devotee, a sannyasi, respected sannyasi. But here Prabhupada is in Manhattan in this kind of a situation where the host does not want him to be, not very comfortable to have him. So one morning at 7 a.m., Carl and Srila Prabhupada take a walk. And then they must be talking about locating another place. And there was another person who was constantly visiting the gatherings and meetings with Swamiji was Mike. Mike is one who becomes Mukunda later on. So they think about going to Mike's house, and Carl calls from a public phone, and it's 7 a.m. in the morning. And those days, Mike had a job, a late night job, as a singer and composer of a music in a nightclub. So he had just come back from his work about 5 a.m. and slept. And 2 hours later, he gets this phone call and just wakes up from his sleep and takes the phone call, and Carl says, Mike, I'm Carl here. I want to come and see you. Then Mike says, what? I just slept. It's too early. Do you want to really see me now? And then Carl says, yes, I want to see you. And I'm with the Swami. Oh my God. Carl and Swami, looks like some kind of an emergency. It's so early in the morning. So he jumps out of the bed. And then he says, okay, give me a few minutes to get ready and to receive. And he just jumps out of the bed. And Janaki, at that time, she's not initiated. She was also sleeping. And who's this early morning at 7 a.m.? Somebody is coming to the house and disturbing. You can imagine that in America, at such early hours, somebody disturbs you. People really get annoyed. It's not done, especially to go to somebody's house. And so Mike is just getting ready to receive, and already the doorbell rings. So he goes and opens the door and lets him, and Carl is there, Swami is there. And then, hi Swami. Those days, they didn't know they have to pay obeisance, they have to say Hare Krishna, none of those things. They would say, hi Swami. And he invited him to sit inside and in the living room on the sofa. And Swamiji sat there, and Carl was there, and Mike. And Carl began to explain that how things have not been going on very nicely between Paul and Swamiji. And Paul has been going crazy the last few days and last few weeks especially. And so he needs an alternate place. So then Mike begins to understand that he needs another place, and then he's looking for. And then Mike begins to think that it looks like now Swamiji wants my house. And what will happen, And then Mike starts giving excuses. Swamiji, even Carl asks, how long you have been in this place? And he says, last 1 year I've been here. And Swamiji has brought one suitcase, holding a suitcase in his hand, and he's come into the house. And so he's looked at the suitcase and he's thinking, oh, now he's trying to put all things together. Now what's going to happen? Swamiji is going to now appropriate into my house. And so he says that, Swamiji, a lot of musicians come here and we keep practicing, we keep singing, drummers and with guitar, and a lot of loud music happens here. Maybe this is not really the right place. And if you give me a few days, I'll find a place. And I have some experience in finding a place. And then so he says that I can find a place for Swamiji. So Carl understands that this is not really the very best of the situation even for Swamiji. And while this conversation is going on, Jan comes, and she has cut some oranges and comes, and he says, "Hi, Swami, it was very nice. You had offered that feast last time. I had come there, and it was very nice." Oh, and then Swamiji looks up and says, "Oh, are you Mike's wife?" And she's shocked a little bit. Wife? No, we just live together here. And then there is a flash of disapproval on Srila Prabhupada's face. Can you imagine what's going on? What is this? He's just getting introduced to the American way of life. And of course, but he's absorbed in many other things now. That flash of disapproval on his face dissolves into discussion of other things. And then she comes and gives the fruits for Srila Prabhupada, for Swamiji to honor, to accept. And then they talk about this for a while, and then Carl says, okay, I'll have Swamiji in my house for some more time while you find another place for Swamiji. And so with that, they close, and Swamiji rises. He picks up his suitcase, and Carl and Swami walk out of the house. And Mike is watching. Oh my God. And he feels guilty that he could not accommodate. And he remembers that Prabhupada walking away, carrying a suitcase. I think this is one of the very, very significant moments of Srila Prabhupada in the early days in New York. Not having a proper residence and carrying his suitcase and early in the morning at 7 a.m. moving around, and in the house of somebody who's not very comfortable to have him, going through all these kind of situations. So Mike looks up in the local newspapers and identifies one place, and then he calls up Carl and says that I've spoken to the landlord. There is one place not very far from where they are, and if they could come and look up the place. And he gives him the address, and then they decide to come and see the place. So Swamiji and Carl walk to this place, and Mike has already gone to that place, 26 2nd Avenue, and the landlord is there. And Mike begins to explain to him that this Swamiji, he's an Indian Swami. He wants to conduct classes, and he's the author of a few books, and he has met the Prime Minister of India, and the Prime Minister of India has appreciated his books. And he's giving him an introduction of Swamiji. And they're talking for a few minutes, and then outside the building, outside the storefront. And in a few minutes, Carl and Swamiji comes, and they shake hands. And Mike introduces Swami. And then the landlord says, can we see the place? And they open the door. He has a big key bunch and unlocks and opens the door. And they see it's an empty, open storefront. And there was some kind of a gift store. And so on the glass, it had big lettering, matchless gifts. And the big hall, and then it was just bare hall, wooden floor, white walls, and here and there was patches. And then the landlord said that I'll get this painted. And the advantage Mike saw was that this is right on the ground floor and opening into the street so that more people can come. Unlike 94 Bowery, which was on the 4th floor, and one had to go up to the 4th floor and not so accessible, not so visible to public. So Mike thought that this was this was an advantage. And Swamiji saw that one, and he also instantly said that, yes, this is a good place. And then the next question was, Carl asked, what is the rent for this place? So the landlord says the rent is $100 a month. So Swamiji looks at him and he says, these two, Mike and Carl, they are members of my society, and they pay a monthly fee of $21. And I want you also to become a member of my society. Mike is thinking, what? Society? Member? I'm not any member. But then he's thinking, okay, Swamiji is actually talking about something. And then he lets Swamiji do the talk. And then Swamiji has brought the 3 books, the Bhagavatam. He opens from his bag and he hands over the books and says, I want you also to become a member and pay a $21. And you don't have to pay anything actually. You become a member, these books are for you, and we will deduct that $21 from the monthly rent that we have to pay. And so already the landlord, he's just met Swami, elderly person, saffron robes, come from India, scholar, author of books, and he's hearing about all these things, and he's sort of taken aback. And then he's sort of, he didn't have much to say, and he's sort of accepting the offer very graciously. And then he looks at the book, and then he turns the pages. It must have taken quite a lot of effort to write these books. And Swamiji is nodding and he's saying, yes. And then the landlord says, there is one apartment behind. If you are interested, I can show you that. Carl says, yes, can we see that? And then they go out through the back door and come to the courtyard there. And then they walk up the step on the first floor. There is a apartment with 2 rooms, and Carl and Swamiji and all of them, they see, and then they ask, how much is the rent? And they say $85 for that. So 100 for that. 100 has now become 79 and 85 here. And so Carl and Mike look at each other and say, between 2 of us, I think we should find a way. And the landlord says, there's no deposit for this, and I'm happy to give this away without deposit. So they agree on to the whole thing. And he says, I'll get this painted. And so they walk out, and the deal is made. And on July 1st, Swamiji gets possession of the storefront and the apartment. And from Center Street, a few of his followers, they carry different things. Somebody is carrying the typewriter, somebody is carrying the dictaphone, somebody is carrying the big suitcases, somebody is carrying a trunk full of books of Swamiji, and Swamiji is also carrying a trunk, and all of them walk from that place, come to 2nd Avenue, and they bring all the different things into the room and take it to the apartment. And on 1st of July, the Srila Prabhupada occupies this place and very soon starts conducting. This is a big hall and open to the street. A lot of people can come. It is more accessible, more visible, much better than 94 Bowery. And so Prabhupada starts conducting. And then between the lawyer and Swamiji, that discussion is still going on. And then in one of those discussions, when Swamiji suggests the name, that this will be known as International Society for Krishna Consciousness. The lawyer says that maybe you should call it International Society for God Consciousness, because nobody knows Krishna in America. So Swamiji says, no, God consciousness is a very vague term, and this should be known as Krishna consciousness, and this society will make Krishna known all over the world. If people don't know who is Krishna, this society will make Krishna known all over the world. That was the kind of reasoning that Prabhupada had, that God consciousness is a very vague word. And he used the word Krishna consciousness. And in fact, the word Krishna consciousness was also coined by Srila Prabhupada, which later on he would say that he drew that on the basis of one expression that Rupa Goswami had used in one of his works. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Matihi. Matihi means consciousness. Consciousness, Bhavita means imbued with. And consciousness which is imbued with Krishna Bhakti Rasa. So that's how Prabhupada had coined that word, Krishna consciousness. And he wanted this to be a society of Krishna consciousness for devotees to come together who are practicing. And as per the vision of his spiritual instruction of his spiritual master, and as per the prophecy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this has to be an international society. And that's how the name International Society for Krishna Consciousness came up. And so one morning, on 13th of July, Srila Prabhupada is speaking, early morning, 7 a.m. lecture. And there are a few young followers. And then he's talking, and the lawyer comes there with the papers. And he comes into at the back of the room when the class is happening, and Prabhupada is sitting at the far end and addressing a few devotees who are sitting in front of him, and the door is at the far end. The door opens and the lawyer comes in. He takes off his shoes and he is sitting on a ledge there and waiting for the class to get over. And then at the end of the class, Prabhupada invites. So here we have the lawyer, so-and-so, please come forward. And as you all know, we are going to start this society. And he has brought the papers. And I want some of you to sign and give your name. Mike, can you give your name? And all of them, they are all young followers, and they want to help Swamiji. And if Swamiji, if they can help by signing a document and help Swamiji incorporate a society. Those days, the thinking among them was that if you have the society incorporated as a non-profit, you will get some benefits, you can collect some donations, and you may get some tax exemptions and those kind of things. So that is the reason why Swamiji has a big vision. What is his vision? To create a worldwide society of Krishna consciousness. They all could not comprehend. They thought it is to get some tax exemption or to collect some donation. And Swamiji wants some help, and we will help him. We will put our signature. So the papers are distributed among a few of them. They all sign, and they become members of the society. And then the lawyer takes those things and then gets the thing incorporated. And that is how the International Society for Krishna Consciousness was founded. And this happened on 13th of July, 1966, at 26 2nd Avenue, New York. And that was the first formal temple. It was Prabhupada's own place now. He was not sharing with somebody, and so he was freely able to conduct. He had that apartment behind, so he would spend time there typing, and he would come down and have classes, and the kirtans would happen. This was an ideal situation. And now you see, on July 1st, the Srila Prabhupada took possession of 26 2nd Avenue, and 13th of July, 13 days from the day of taking the possession, this society was incorporated. And after that, many, many more temples began to happen, expand, and now we have the wonderful movement that Srila Prabhupada created, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna.